If you agree that ordinary people can be hiding extraordinary secrets, make sure to like and subscribe, because what you're about to hear will change the way you look at someone quietly working in the corner of an office late at night. Because for years, nobody noticed her. Nobody asked why she always stayed back after hours, sliding reports into the shredder like clockwork. Her face calm, her movements precise, almost mechanical, as if she was built for this quiet kind of invisibility. But the truth is, Maya was not just some 28-year-old analyst with a thankless desk job. She was the last person anyone expected to become a critical link in something far bigger, something buried beneath contracts, shipping manifests, and stacks of government paperwork disguised as routine. Until the night everything shifted. The night her phone lit up with a single coded phrase that hadn't been spoken to her since her brief training years ago, when she thought she left intelligence work behind. Falcon Quartz, secure channel. And that's where this story begins. Not in a war zone, not in the chaos of an overseas mission, but in the stale glow of an office fluorescent light, where Maya fed another stack of reports into the hungry shredder, its mechanical jaws humming steadily, unaware, or maybe refusing to accept, that the reports she was tearing apart weren't as disposable as she'd been told. That every strip of paper might carry more weight than the quiet paycheck she collected at the end of each month. Maya had grown used to being underestimated. People saw her as diligent but replaceable, the kind of worker who could be swapped out without anyone noticing. But that was exactly why she had been given this position in the first place. A job that looked like busy work to outsiders, but served as a pressure valve for data too sensitive to leave behind. And though she hadn't thought about it in years, she still remembered the words her old training officer once told her. Sometimes the most important person isn't the one in the field, it's the one guarding the trash. Tonight, those words echoed louder than usual as the office emptied out and the silence grew heavy. Because when her secure phone buzzed, cutting through the drone of the shredder, she froze. Nobody had the authority to use that code anymore, at least not with her, unless something had gone terribly wrong. She checked the screen once, twice, her heart hammering in her chest, and the sender's name sent a rush of old memories flooding back. Ethan, the operations lead she hadn't spoken to since she quietly stepped away from contractor work 3 years ago, the man who once told her she had a mind built for shadows. Now, shadows seemed to be pressing in all around her as she slowly powered down the shredder, her hand lingering on the switch, and the reality set in. Those countless nights of destroying paper weren't just mundane. They might have been part of something she hadn't even realized she was caught in. She looked down at the half-fed report still hanging from the machine's teeth, its header stamped with a contract number that meant nothing to her. But the phrasing, the odd symbols in the margins, stirred something in the back of her mind, as if she had seen their kind before during intelligence briefings long buried under her everyday routine. Maya's throat went dry as she sat back in her chair, the buzz of the fluorescent lights seeming louder than ever. Because if the code was real, if the channel was still alive, then she wasn't shredding out-of-date paperwork. She was eliminating evidence of something meant to stay hidden from command. Her hands trembled slightly as she typed back into the secure app, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. But before she could finish, another message appeared. Do not leave the building. Shredder logs compromised. Secure what you can. She read it again, pulse racing, the meaning sinking in. Someone inside the firm was using her shredding runs to cover their tracks, and now Ethan was telling her not to move, not to make a sound, because if she walked out, whoever planted those files would know she was onto them. The office, once so familiar and dull, suddenly felt hostile. The glass doors reflected her image like a stranger, the cubicles stretched into shadowed alleys where anyone could be hiding. And even the security guard downstairs, always a little too curious, always lingering near her desk, flashed in her mind as a possible suspect. Every instinct told her to grab her bag and run. But another part of her, the part she thought she'd buried, the part that once kept her alive during quiet tests in dimly lit rooms, whispered that this was why she had been placed here, why she hadn't been forgotten by the network entirely. She drew a slow breath, her eyes moving back to the shredded strips curling inside the bin. Each one a puzzle piece that meant nothing on its own, but everything when placed together. And for the first time in years, she felt the stir of purpose beneath the routine. This wasn't busy work. This wasn't ordinary. This was the beginning of something she hadn't been ready to face again, until now. And as her phone buzzed a final time with one chilling line, "Trust no one on site," she realized that whatever game had started, she was already deep in the middle, armed with nothing but paper, memory, and the faint echo of a name she thought she'd never hear again: Falcon Quartz. The moment Maya read those words, "Trust no one on site," the fluorescent glow of the office no longer felt like a quiet workspace but a stage lit too brightly, exposing her while leaving the rest of the building wrapped in threatening shadows. And she sat there with her hands clenched on the desk, her eyes scanning the cubicles and glass partitions as if they might suddenly reveal the face of the traitor hidden in plain sight. The truth was she had always been dismissed as background, the diligent young analyst who shredded papers no one else cared about, and that dismissal had been her shield. But now that shield was gone, stripped away by the knowledge that every document she had destroyed might have been more than routine clutter. They might have been smuggling channels for sensitive intelligence, and she had been the unwitting accomplice. Her quiet, reliable work turned into a cover for espionage. Ethan's voice crackled in her ear through the secure line as soon as she plugged in her earpiece, distorted but calm in that way only he could manage. The voice of someone who had spent years threading needles through crises, and he wasted no time. "Maya, listen carefully. You've been fed doctored shredding stacks, embedded intel disguised as disposal. Someone is bleeding information through your hands. We can't risk you walking out now, not until we know who's inside. That office is compromised, Falcon Quartz. You are not invisible anymore." Her stomach nodded at the old code name, a name that once made her feel sharp and dangerous, but now felt heavy, almost alien, and she wanted to tell him she hadn't asked for this, that she had deliberately left the shadow world to be an ordinary 28-year-old with bills and a routine, but she knew he wouldn't hear it, because whether she liked it or not, the code name fit again. Ethan directed her to scan the documents she hadn't yet shredded, and as her eyes skimmed the pages, she began to notice oddities she had previously overlooked. Contract numbers repeating in strange intervals, symbols hidden in the margins, formatting that didn't match the firm's templates, like invisible fingerprints meant for someone who knew how to read them. "It's steganography," Ethan muttered after she described it. "They're embedding live directives inside cover contracts. Every shred you've fed that machine may have erased a lake in an operational chain. We need to know how deep this goes." Her pulse surged with guilt as she imagined field teams somewhere relying on intel that had been erased because of her, but Ethan cut her spiraling thoughts short. "Don't lose yourself. Falcon Quartz. You didn't know. What matters is that you can stop it now. But we need proof." She nodded, even though he couldn't see her, her eyes narrowing at the half-fed page still stuck into Shredder's teeth, and she pulled it out carefully, scanning the hidden markings again, her analyst's brain kicking in with that old precision she thought she'd left behind. This wasn't just about finding the mole. It was about surviving the next hour, because if someone inside knew she had discovered the ruse, then the office wasn't just a workplace anymore. It was a trap. As if to confirm the thought, the sound of a door shutting somewhere down the hall echoed through the empty space, sharp and final, and Maya froze, her breath catching as she realized she was no longer alone on this floor. Ethan's voice grew sharper. "Stay low, stay quiet. Whoever it is, they're testing if you're still working. Don't give them reason to check your desk." Maya ducked beneath her workstation, clutching the report, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might give her away, and through the gap beneath the cubicle wall, she saw shadows moving slowly, deliberately, like someone who wasn't lost but searching. She thought about the people who had access at night. Her manager, smug in his superiority and always dismissive of her monotonous job, the night security guard, whose eyes lingered too long on her screen when he delivered coffee, and the junior assistant, a woman who always forgot sensitive files on Maya's desk, almost as if testing how thorough she was. Any of them could be walking these halls now, and the thought made her throat tighten until she could barely swallow. The footsteps paused near her desk, the shadow long against the wall, and she held her breath, clutching the crumpled report so tightly the paper cut her palm. And then, after what felt like an eternity, the sound receded, the footsteps fading toward the far end of the floor. Ethan's voice whispered in her ear, steady but urgent. "Good. They didn't check. You need to move now. Falcon Quartz. Get to the archive room." That's where they've been slipping in the altered stacks. Maya rose slowly, her legs shaking, and made her way through the maze of cubicles, each corner feeling like an ambush point, each shadow a threat, until she reached the heavy door of the archive, a place she rarely visited except to sign out bulk folders for shredding. She keyed in her access code, half expecting it to be denied, but the lock clicked open, and she slipped inside, locking it behind her, the smell of dust and paper filling her lungs. The room was lined with shelves stacked with binders and boxes, endless rows of what looked like ordinary paperwork, but Ethan guided her over the channel. Look for mismatched labels. Dates that don't align. They've been hiding the feed inside decoys. She scanned the shelves with shaking hands until she spotted them. Boxes labeled with dates that hadn't yet occurred, subtle enough to pass casual inspection, but glaringly obvious to anyone trained. Pulling one down, she rifled through the contents, and her stomach dropped. The box contained not shredded leftovers, but active intelligence reports disguised as mundane contracts, directives written in the same hidden coding she had just noticed. It wasn't one or two documents. It was an entire system of leaks, feeding live data out under the guise of disposal. She whispered what she saw to Ethan, and for the first time, his voice faltered. "This is bigger than I thought. You're sitting on a pipeline. We can't just expose it. We have to catch the hand pulling the strings." Maya swallowed hard, staring at the box, feeling the weight of years of quiet, unseen labor pressing down on her. All this time she thought she was invisible, unimportant, but now she realized she had been standing in the eye of a storm without even knowing it. The thought was terrifying, but it was also galvanizing. She was no longer shredding for routine. She was guarding the last line of defense. And as she packed the incriminating documents back into the box, her phone buzzed with one final message from Ethan that made her blood run cold. "They know the channel's active. They'll come for you first. Hold your ground, Falcon Quartz. We're moving in." Maya's hands shook as she slid the incriminating box back into place, every nerve screaming that she shouldn't be here, that she should run, but Ethan's words still pressed into her ear like a command carved in stone. "Hold your ground, Falcon Quartz. We're moving in." She crouched in the archive room, staring at the rows of silent shelves, the stale smell of dust and paper surrounding her like a tomb, and for the first time she realized the stakes weren't abstract. They weren't about reports or contracts, or even her shredded paper trails. They were about her life, because if the mole knew she'd uncovered the leak, then the question wasn't whether they would come for her, it was when. She pressed her ear to the heavy door, straining to catch even the faintest sound beyond, and her heart clenched when she heard it. The unmistakable, deliberate creak of footsteps drawing closer, not rushed, not casual, but measured, confident. The steps of someone who knew exactly where they were going. Ethan's voice returned, sharp but calm, the steadiness of a man guiding her through fire. "You've got maybe 2 minutes. They'll try to corner you. Use the room. Use the documents. You're not a target, you're bait. Make them show themselves." Maya almost laughed at the absurdity of it, her breath trembling, because she had never wanted to be bait, had never wanted to play spy games again. But deep inside, under years of dusty routine, her instincts clicked into place. The careful pattern recognition, the tactical patience, the cold focus that once earned her the code name she thought she'd buried. She grabbed the shredder bin she had carried earlier, its curled paper strips spilling like confetti, and scattered them across the floor in front of the shelves, a crude trap, but enough to make footsteps betray themselves. Then she slid behind a stack of boxes, crouching low, every muscle tense, every breath shallow. The doorknob rattled once, twice, and then the lock disengaged with a quiet beep. Her code had been bypassed. The door opened, and a tall shadow filled the frame, silhouetted by the corridor light. She couldn't see the face yet, but the outline was enough. Broad shoulders, the casual way the figure held themselves, as if certain of their dominance. The figure stepped inside, boots crunching softly on the scattered shreds, and Maya's heart clenched as she finally saw the face illuminated by the flicker of the hall light. It was her manager, Collins, the man who had always belittled her job, who once smirked and told her she was lucky to even have work this simple. Now his eyes were cold, his movements precise, and as he stepped deeper into the archive, she saw something glint in his hand. Not a weapon, not yet, but a sleek tablet, its screen alive with code and transmission locks. Ethan's voice was a whisper in her ear. "Hits him. He's the conduit. Get proof, stall him." Maya rose slowly from behind the boxes, her voice steady though her chest quaked. "Funny, Collins. For someone who always mocked me for shredding, you seem awfully interested in my trash." His head snapped toward her, surprise flickering across his face before it hardened into something crueler, something predatory. "You were supposed to keep your head down, Maya," he said softly, stepping closer, his voice low and deliberate. "You were useful because you didn't ask questions. But then you had to go and open the wrong box." He tilted the tablet in her direction, and she caught a glimpse of transmission logs scrolling across the screen. Shipment manifests turned into coded drafts, intelligence disguised as innocuous paperwork, all routed through her shredder locks. "You have no idea how much money flows through this pipeline," he sneered. "And you almost shredded me out of a fortune." Maya's stomach twisted, but her mind sharpened, remembering Ethan's words. Make him show himself. She forced a smirk, masking the tremor in her chest. "So what is it, Collins? You sell out ops teams overseas so you can pad your retirement? Or is someone paying you to burn the country one page at a time?" His eyes narrowed, and for the first time she saw the crack in his arrogance. "You wouldn't understand," he muttered, stepping closer. "You're just the paper girl. You were never meant to know." But his voice was rising, his words spilling out, every line another nail in his coffin, and Maya angled her earpiece closer, praying Ethan's channel was recording every syllable. Collins raised the tablet higher, his thumb hovering over a flashing icon. "I can wipe everything right now," he hissed. "One press and this all disappears. You, the evidence, the trail. And no one will ever know." Maya's eyes darted to the shelves, the box still slightly ajar, the coded reports peeking out, and she made her choice. "You're wrong," she said calmly, straightening her shoulders. "Someone already knows." For the briefest second, confusion flickered across his face. And in that heartbeat, the sound of boots thundered from the hall, louder, closer, until the door burst open and two figures in tactical gear stormed in, weapons raised, voices commanding Collins to drop the tablet. His face drained of color as he realized what had happened, his eyes cutting back to Maya with a venomous glare. "You little." But he never finished, because one of the operatives snatched the tablet from his hands and forced him to the ground, cuffing his wrists in seconds. Maya stood frozen, her chest heaving, as Ethan's voice finally softened in her ear. "Perfectly done, Falcon Quartz. We've got him. You're clear." For a moment she felt weightless, as if the last hour had been a fever dream, but the box of documents still sat open, the shreds still scattered like breadcrumbs, and Collins still knelt on the floor, spitting curses at her like daggers. One of the operatives turned to her, his visor reflecting her own pale face back at her, and handed her the tablet. "You saved us weeks, maybe months of chasing shadows," he said simply, his voice muffled but sincere. Maya took the device, her fingers trembling, and for the first time in years, she felt the old certainty settle into her bones, that she wasn't invisible, that she wasn't just the paper girl. She had seen the enemy hiding in plain sight, and she had survived. As the operatives hauled Collins away, his voice echoing down the hall, Maya lingered in the archive, staring at the shelves that had once seemed so dull, so lifeless. Now she saw them for what they were, the battlefield she had been guarding all along. Ethan's voice returned one last time, steady and certain. "You did more than hold your ground tonight. You've earned your name back. Welcome home, Falcon Quartz." And as the sun began to rise outside the office windows, spilling gold over the city, Maya realized her life had changed forever. Not with a dramatic mission overseas, but with a shredder, a box of papers, and a decision to stop hiding from who she really was.